Hello, YouTube. How is it going? How are you? Hey, this is JP Miller with Career Inclusive. I'm glad to be here with you today. Today, we're talking about putting yourself on the journey. Uh, as you want to arrive, you got to put yourself on the journey. So let's talk about this. A lot of people want to arrive, and whatever arriving means for you, a lot of people want to do that. They want to arrive. They want to be there. They want to be a millionaire. They want to have the perfect dream job. They want to have the perfect company. They want to have the things. So many people don't put themselves on the journey, often because they're afraid. Let's see, I got a little glare here. I'm going to take these off. So we all start somewhere. Let's just talk about this. Let's be real. We all start somewhere. We all start in different places, and we could have a whole conversation about that, right? Mm, The egalitarianism and starting at different points on the spectrum, the economic spectrum, social status, demographics, right? We could talk all night about that for sure. Uh, when it comes down to it, those things can definitely have degrees of influence. That at the end of the day, we all start in different places, but it's really about what you do with what you have. How you use the skills that you have, how you use the talents that you're given, and what you do with those. Some people with natural born abilities squander their lives away. Other people who come from terrible situations become billionaires. And so it really does come down to what do you do with the skills that you have. Of course, it would be helpful to begin with more, but hey, this is where we are today, and so let's make the most of it that we have. Get yourself on the journey. Get started. I'm reminded of the parable of the talents, right? There were three people. This master gives his servants three sets of talents. One is given five talents, one is given three, and another is given one talent, right? And after like the master goes away for a year and the servants they do different things with their talents, and the master comes back and he calls upon his servants and he says, hey, I've been away, I've come back, I want you to bring back my talents. And the one with the five talents comes to him and says, oh master, I invested, I put your talents to work, and look, I've doubled them, now you have 10 talents. And he's like, oh, well done, good and faithful servant, I'm going to reward you. And then the servant with the three talents says, oh look, I put my talents to work, I did this job, and look, I was able to double my talents as well, and here are six talents. And the master says, oh, well done, good and faithful servant, come on, I'm going to reward you. And then the one comes and he's just like shaking, he's scared, he's got a lot of imposter syndrome going on, he's afraid to look the CEO in the eyes. And he says, I knew that you were a great and a terrible man, and I was afraid, so I buried your talent in the dirt. And he said, well, you could have at least invested my talent in Bitcoin so I could have gone to the moon. He didn't actually say that, but he says, you're out of here, get out of here, and give the one talent to the one who has the many, right? And so the point of the story there is that even though the man who had the one talent could have invested and doubled, and maybe he only doubled and he only had two talents, but we're led to believe by the man who had the three talents that if he had put the money to work, or at the very least put the money to the banks for usury, or put it in Bitcoin so it could moon, that he would have been accepted as well, right? And so we've got to put ourselves on a journey. Fear is always going to be there knocking on the door, but we've got to be overcomers of ourselves, right? We are overcomers by our story. Our story makes us overcomers. And the more we tell ourselves positive stories and we reinforce those positive stories, the greater our story becomes, the more empowered we feel, and the more we're able to do. We create a positive feedback cycle. Some people get sidetracked. I'll tell you my story briefly here. when I was a kid, I wanted to make computer games. Like, middle school, I just spent all of my days drawing out video games that I would create, making complex storylines and characters and drawing everything out and like plot points and worlds. I was designing worlds on paper, on pen and paper, and just dreaming of programming on my dad's Commodore 64, or a little 386 or a 486, and learning how I could make games, and even try to learn C++ when I was a kid, but it put me to sleep. So what are you going to do? It happens, you know? And by the time I got to high school, I was like, oh, computers are just so frustrating. I'm going to do something else. And I ended up on a totally different track for 11 years, doing something completely different. And it took a long time. I completely off my track. But after 11 years, came back to it, and I wasn't enjoying what I was working as. Like, well, I've always wanted to be a programmer. I've always wanted to work with computers. Let's go back to that. Let's do that. And I taught myself to code, and then I started my own company, and then doors started to open, and and now I get to share that story with you all. And for me, that's a fantastic thing, and that's becomes part of my journey. And so when you do get sidetracked, brush off the dust, brush off the dirt, and push forward. Um, how to make the most of what you have. So how can we do this? So realize that perfect is the enemy of good. And when you're beginning, almost always getting started is going to be better than waiting for perfection. Oftentimes we wait for the perfect moment, we wait for the perfect time. But there is no perfect moment. There is no perfect time. There are very rarely are second chances. You got to seize an opportunity when it presents itself. Like trying to talk to people or trying to make a perfect introduction, and you psych yourself out, and then never make the introduction, never get to meet the person that you want to meet. And we can do that because telling ourselves, oh, I'll do it next time. And then there hardly ever is the next time, right? So you've got to seize the moment. Perfect is the enemy of good. Just put yourself on the journey, get started, and go. And assess your talents. So getting into real actionable advice about how you can put yourself on the journey and how you can get started. And soon I want to talk about like LinkedIn profiles and resume profiles as part of the 60 days of value. But before that, I felt really drawn to talk about this today, so that we're laying this foundation of, hey, you've got to get in the right mindset. Mindset starts everything. And then we can talk about your resume and your LinkedIn profile, and we can get into the nitty gritty about what recruiters are looking for, and you get into like all the details about summary statements and bullet points and all these things. But first, you've got to put yourself on the journey. You've got to be willing to take some knuckles, to take some ups and downs, and just to put yourself on the journey. That's the most important thing that you can do for yourself. And so, how to get started? Assess your talents and your skills. Take a look at what you have. Look at your strengths and focus on your strengths. Okay, and then maximize what you do well naturally. Find those strengths and then maximize what you do well. And push yourself forward on that. And then once you've maximized your skills as much as possible, identify the next skill you need in order to level up. And then begin to work on that skill. Improve that skill that you need to take the next big step, and then rinse and repeat. Just keep repeating that cycle and building up your skills. In the case of if you're an engineer or a data analyst or a manager, you want to go to the next run in your field, then take a look at job descriptions and see what skills are most commonly asked for. See what skills are most in demand. Like look at the most recent Stack Overflow survey, and find what technologies are in demand. And then learn that most in demand skill that's relevant to your career goals, and put yourself on that journey and study it. There are tons of boot camps now. You don't necessarily need to pay thousands of dollars to put yourself in an intensive. There are options now where you can keep your job, you can continue with your income, and just set aside 2 to 3 hours a day, maybe in the evening or the early morning, or maybe a massive set of hours on the weekend to upskill yourself. I once heard old advice, and I try to find the source of this. I heard it on the radio years and years ago, and this was originally was advice for Black men to help them accelerate, well, not accelerate, but just to start a career and to find their place in society. And I wish I had found the source. Like I said, this was years and years ago, more than 10 years ago, that I heard this advice about getting yourself started. And if you're starting from nothing, or you're starting from very little, first step is to get a blue collar job and work that, save your money as you can, invest in yourself as you're able to, and then learn a trade. As really as quickly as possible, learn a trade, whatever, plumbing, construction, electrician. Just learn that trade, and then get into the trade. The trade will teach you a lot of other skills as well. And once you're in the trade, begin to learn white collar skills, and then get your first white collar job and move up the ladder in that area, and continue to improve your education. Education, as expensive as it can be sometimes, is still the best social mover, is still the best vehicle to climb the social ladder, is to improve your education. And the great thing today is that it doesn't necessarily mean a bachelor of arts or a bachelor of sciences or a master's degree or a PhD. Today that can mean a boot camp, that can mean a relevant certification, that can mean some kind of a certification in a specific domain or a field that you're looking for. And that just shows that you have this body of experience. You don't necessarily need, the whole kit and caboodle, so to speak, right, of like a traditional degree. You can get more of a focused boot camp or certification from a reputable organization like a Lambda school or something like that, or like a Udacity, just as some examples. And you put yourself on that journey, and then continue to invest in yourself, and create a side hustle, maximize that, and always bet on yourself. Always maximize yourself. Always maximize your skills. And believe in yourself. You believe in yourself, and you hustle, and you improve day by day. You are your biggest competition. Avoid falling into the trap of looking at other people and comparing yourself to others. That's almost always going to be a losing game, or it can create bitterness or a sense of arrogance. It's not the way to truly advance yourself. The best way to advance yourself is to focus on what you can do to become a better version of you, become that alpha version of you. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you all very much. Be putting yourselves on a journey. How are you putting yourself on the journey? What are you doing? I love to hear that in the comments about what you're doing to put yourself on the journey, what you found to get yourself further ahead, and what practices and what habits you've created for yourself that you practice every day to become a better version of yourself. I would love to hear about that. Please share that in the comments. And if you find value in this content, you'd like to donate to our Patreon, I greatly appreciate it. We love our contributors, and thank you all very much for your support. Check us out on Facebook and LinkedIn. The links are below in the comments. And if you want some more content, we're making content every day as part of 60 Days of Value. I'll be back with you again tomorrow in roughly 24 hours. Have a great one. Thank you.